Feels strange without Lucille. It's our first meeting without her.
Oh, come on. I wasn't even going to bring that up other than to say, hey, Fritz got this. It's 10 a.m., by the way. So as I always, good. It's been reminded to us that this meeting is being recorded, as we try to do with all these. Welcome to everyone. Thank you so much, as always, for being a part of this. Some of the busiest people, as I remind city managers and management team in the world, are economic development folks. And so out of respect to you, I always want to try to start on time. I'm Marty Weeder. I'm Director of Economic Development for the City of Grand Prairie. If I've not met you, I think I've met many of you, but I look forward to, if we haven't met face-to-face yet, doing that someday. We're going to have a couple of guest speakers today, and you've probably seen that from the agenda. Stacy Webb from the Economic Development Administration is going to give us an update. And we're thrilled from that to have her come back on and be with us. And then we've got a panel of several of us that are going to speak, including Donna Simmons, Jeff Sanford, Craig Hulse, and myself, to talk a little bit about economic development and economic recovery during COVID phase one, post-COVID, continued COVID, and whatever we want to call what we're in and what we're going to from here on out. Whether we've had any changes and what we're doing differently, perhaps, as a result of that. For any of the guests that are with us, we encourage you to use the chat feature for any questions or comments that may come up during the meeting. Jerry Watson from the North Central Texas Council of Governments, a staff member, will monitor the chat and perhaps remind Crit and myself, if need be, to bring up those items if we've not covered them. Keep in mind, and this was a good question somebody else asked earlier, Mickey Hillock did, that this Zoom webinar provides us a record of board attendance. So we're not going to take formal attendance, but as long as you're here, if you need to come off and on, we realize you're working while you're on this. Don't hesitate. That's not a problem. Once we see you're here, Jerry's probably capturing all that, and so it shouldn't be a problem at all. We do have one new NCTEDD board member with us today, but a lot of us know her. We're so grateful to have Megan South with us from Tarrant County, the Tarrant County Economic Development Manager, and she's filling an open seat for the county on the board. Megan, so glad to have you with us. Welcome, and we look forward to having your contributions and know you'll be a valuable member of this board. So
thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Yep, we're glad to have you. Before we dive into the program we've got today, let's address the minutes from August 1. It's been a day or two since we've met, and that's okay. But hopefully you've had a chance to review those. Does anybody have any comments or edits, or can I get a motion to approve? If not, if there are no changes.
Motion to approve the minutes? Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
That's all right. You can have it.
Yes, motion to approve the August minutes.
Chris, thank you. And then Jeff, we'll get the second. How's that, Fred? Is that all right? And unless there's any opposition, we'll accept them by acclamation. Okay. We mentioned from the start, it's always great to have Stacy Webb from the Economic Development Administration here with us, and she's here to give us a brief update. Stacy?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me today. I know you have a very full agenda, so I do really appreciate getting a few minutes to share some updates. I'm just going to give you a sort of high-level overview of where EDA is in terms of funding and programming. I do have some slides that kind of support what I'm going to tell you, but what I'll do is just email those to Prit if that's okay, and you guys can have them to refer back to. So since the supplemental ARPA funds were expended, we've been back to our regular programs. After a few months on a continuing resolution, the budget was passed in December, as you all know. For the FY 2023, EDA received $1.6 billion for 3 basic areas of work, all of which support our sole mission of supporting economic development. Our core programs that fund infrastructure, workforce, and entrepreneurship, the ones you're probably most familiar with. Our national programs that support STEM efforts, research, and technology commercialization. and to continue the more recent work that was started under our Build Back Better programs funded under ARPA by providing some very large place-based investments to advance innovation, improve global competitiveness. So I'm not going to really go through each program. I just wanted to provide, I guess, a few updates or reminders, if you will, of the two regular programs that we're most known for. So our Public Works program makes up the bulk of our regular funding and supports economic development activities through infrastructure, mainly, that being water, sewer, roads, drainage, rail, ports, and other infrastructure as needed. The average EDA grant request, and this is important because our headquarters puts out a lot of press releases about the amount of money we have, and you know, we do have a good amount of money to work with on the whole. But it's important to know that when you're working with Public Works or Economic Adjustment Assistance programs, you're working with the Austin regional budget. And so that's just an important thing to note because it really can manage the expectation, if you will. You know, when we had the CARES money, we had the ARPA money, those EDA requests could be $3-4 million, even higher in some cases. But we are back down to a regular funding levels. So the Public Works, the average EDA request is $1 to $1.5 million. The Economic Adjustment Assistance Program is intended for communities that are recovering from either natural or man-made disasters. So this could be areas that have been included in a presidentially declared disaster, or a community that has experienced just sudden and severe economic distress because they've had a plant closure and significant job losses. This also can fund infrastructure such as those I discussed in the Public Works program, all of the water, sewer, rail, drainage. It also can fund business incubators and accelerators. It can fund workforce development centers, and it can fund both construction and non-construction. So we can also fund feasibility studies and economic development strategies. The average EDA request amount for this fund is somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million. Now, both of these programs, unlike CARES, unlike ARPA, they do require that a community meet a distress level. And you know, PRIT can certainly help with anyone trying to determine whether or not their community would be able to meet the distress level. We have a lot of different thresholds, and it's usually not a problem. There's usually a way we can find to make sure that a community meets our distress levels, distress thresholds, that is. And they both require a match. And the match is determined by the community's level of distress. So that can be anywhere from 20% match to a 50% match. Okay, so that's our regular programs. I just want to touch on two new programs. The FY23 allocation funds two new programs that were authorized under the CHIPS and Science Act. One, and you may have heard this banded around a little bit, one is the Technology Hubs and Innovation Centers. This is going to allow us to designate 20 geographically distributed regional technology hubs that are focused on technology development, job creation, and basically expanding and supporting the U.S. innovation capacity. I think there's $500 million provided in our FY23 budget. It's sometimes referred to as a down payment for a larger amount that's expected in the next year. The second of those two programs is the Recompete Pilot Project, and that's going to concentrate economic development efforts and investments in communities with large prime age employment gaps. It's basically a program for smaller, persistently distressed communities to help them develop science-driven economies. And there's $200 million for this program, and it is considered a pilot program. There's not a lot of information on either one of these programs yet. Our headquarters staff and specialists are working to basically design the programs now. The rollout for both of these is tentatively set for late spring or summer. I do have the regulations, and they're in the slide that I'll send to Prit. And there's a little bit more information there if you'd like to read more on that before the notice of funding opportunities are released on those. So I'm happy to answer any questions. That's really all I have this morning.
Excellent. Anyone have any questions at all about the programs that have been discussed, and whether you got Stacy on the line, so take advantage of this.
Just a comment, Stacy, I believe for some of the programs you mentioned that the Economic Development District has to be a sponsor, has to be aware of the project application, and has to endorse the application.
That is correct. Just to kind of expand on that, all EDA investments must be in alignment with the regional CEDDs that is developed and managed and maintained by the Economic Development District, this case being North Central. And so absolutely EDA does require a letter, some acknowledgement that the district has, an awareness of the program or the project, and can submit a letter on behalf of that community or applicant along with the application, so that we know that it's working in tandem with the strategies that are identified in that CEDDS document.
Great
Any
question.
other?
Yeah, any
Yeah.
others? Thank you.
One last thing, Marty, I would like to bring up is that this year, this coming spring, Austin is up for the University Center competition. That is a program that funds university centers with 5 years of funding. It's a pretty robust program, and it's a national competition, but it's held at the regional level. So Austin will have their competition. We're finishing up our 5-year awards this year. In the spring, we will have an announcement of that. It is a great opportunity. If you have, community colleges or universities, anything in your area that is interested in applying for the University Center program, it's a tremendous, partnership. It basically funds the expansion of the university or the college's resources in the economic development areas. And so, we normally have, I think, 8 awards in the Austin regional office, and Austin covers Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, 5 states. But I think we're going to try and do at least 10 this year. And we are very interested in getting maybe some of the smaller colleges as opposed to the larger universities.
Good information. And as you see, Dr. Martinez Cosio shaking her head, certainly not a small university, but a very important one for our region. So
Wonderful.
Yep.
I think there's a hand raised. Me?
Yeah, Ron Simmons.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, great. Just wanted to ask Stacy, or maybe you can just send this out to us, but is there any strings attached to this award, particularly other than economic development?
For which program?
For the university program.
University centers? I mean, it has to be for the primary purpose of supporting economic development, but it really is tailored. The applicant, the college, the university can tailor it to what their strengths are, or where they see a need that they need to expand a program or services in those areas. And so it does require a match, but match can be in kind. So you can use staff, so that's helpful.
No particular types of economic development. It's whatever best fit that university in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, we don't support gambling. So if it was an economic development activity that did that would could be an issue just because of the federal regulations against that. But other
Okay.
than that, I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you. Great questions. Anyone else?
Oh, real quick, Stacy, could you talk a little bit about the available funds for this fiscal year as far as what dollars may be actually available?
Well, I can't tell you exactly how much we have left, but what I can tell you is, obviously we were on a continuing resolution for a while there. That doesn't mean that we can't continue to work. In the fall, we had one review and award round for basically ARPA projects that, had really good merit and we wanted to fund, but just ran out of money. So there has been a little bit of money spent. We just had another, I would say, probably not many, maybe 5 or 6 projects funded in January. We will not have another review until March, but we're clipping through the money.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Like I said, this is a prime opportunity to ask Stacy a question, so don't miss out. Well, if there's not, I don't see any on the chat. Stacy, thank you so much as always for
Absolutely.
your great help and for the information you provide for us, and we'll take it and run.
Thank you, and I'll forward those slides over so that Pritt can get them distributed. Let me
We
know
look
if you have any
forward-
questions.
We look forward to
Thank
seeing those. Thank you. You're welcome to stay on with us if you'd like, but I know you probably have more things going on too. So yeah. Have a great day. All right. Well, that was helpful. It's always great to hear about new programs, and as well with the continuing ones. And I especially like hearing those average levels, because that kind of helps us to an extent. If as we're thinking of going after dollars, it's good to know where, what's in the wheelhouse, or what's really in what they're focusing on and what they're funding and the amount. So that should be helpful to all of us. We mentioned at the start that Pritt had proposed and pushed this out to the whole group several weeks ago, that we wanted to kind of stop and maybe talk a little bit and ask and hear what other communities are doing as a result of what's transpired in the last, can you believe it, almost 3 years. Yeah, I shake my head too, to think about how our world has been affected and has changed. But we've got some great just panelists really that have stepped forward and said, yeah, I'll be willing to talk a little bit about our experiences in our community, and based on different population perspectives. Each panelist is going to make a presentation. Pritt's going to bring up some slides here in a minute, and then that'll be followed with a question and answer session. And if you would, like we said from the start, please use the chat feature as a way to post your questions, and we'll get to them after all of the presentations are completed, which I think is a wise way to go. Our first presenter up this morning is Donna Simmons from Kaufman County, Communications and Economic Development Coordinator, and she's in the county category. So Donna, we look forward to hearing from you. Welcome.
Thank you, Marty. First, before I start, during Stacy's presentation, I was cutting in and out a little bit. So if I'm talking and you can't hear me, Marty, would you wave at me? And perhaps I can do something to fix it. But
be glad to. We can hear you now. So, and we lost you. Just 1 second. There's Pritt bringing up your slides, and Donna, let's try it again because I can't hear you. Donna. Yeah, I hate it, but we can't hear you.
taking a job in Austin or near Austin in the city of Hutto, and had only been there 10 months when COVID hit, and the city had to lay off 1/3 of the staff. We were the first city in the state to lay off staff. So I found myself without a job, and I think God works in mysterious ways, because I eventually landed in Kaufman County. And you talk about a county that was ready for a pandemic. We didn't know we were ready. Like I said, I've only been here about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. So what I got to see was the end of the period of shock. When the county was hit, of course, people out in the rural areas, I don't think were as aware of the pandemic and what it might do as those of you in the cities. So what Kaufman County did was simply say, we've got this. It's here. We can't change it. We can't do a thing about stopping it except doing our part individually. So what the county judge did in the commissioner's court was decided to face it head on with boxing gloves on. So we didn't shut down everything in Kaufman County. We didn't shut down businesses mandatorily for a long, long time. We didn't shut down schools mandatorily. Of course, we couldn't, but we didn't stop development. When the phone rang, we still picked it up and we did things. So the businesses were able to survive. And I think the best part about the pandemic, and with every tragedy, the outcome usually brings something much better. And what it did was bring Kaufman County together. So as you can see with this headline right here, it didn't affect us as much as they thought it would. Kaufman County is the fastest growing county in the country, and the numbers show it. I'm not just saying that. We grew 18% last year, and we are in the queue to grow almost double in the next 18 months. We have 30,000 new homes being built or being planned at this moment, which means you put 4 people in each one of those houses, and let's not count the cars that go with that. We will probably have 120,000 more people next year, which brings our population to almost 300,000 or a little bit more. So I'm flying above all of you in the cities, looking down at 30,000 feet. I have 5 major cities in Kaufman County that are over 5,000 population. And I know that seems small to a lot of you, but when they used to be 1,000, it's growing fast. We have Forney, we have Kaufman, Terrell, Crandall, and then we have Maybank, Kemp, and those down in that area. And each one of them have a fantastic economic development program or an EDC that is just out of this world. And I think occasionally you hear Ray Dunlap from Terrell on KRLD and the Ticket talking about how Terrell is the best place to live and work and come out here. Well, people are starting to realize that. For the same price, you can get 2 acres and a house in Collin County. You can come here and get a 20-acre, 5,000 square foot home for the same price. And people are seeing that. So we welcome all of this new growth, but we've got to be in a position to manage it, or it's going to manage us. So as you may or may not know, counties have very, very little power to manage or to determine what a developer is going to do. We don't have the power to tell them you can only do houses this size. We don't have the power to say they have to be this far apart, or you have to provide the infrastructure for this. We don't have the same powers that cities do. So what we did, and Pritt, would you go to the next slide, please? We have 800 square miles, and most of it, if you're driving out here, is wheat fields, cattle, longhorns, horses. A lot of people are still very much into ranching. So with all of that virgin land, we are very attractive to the big developers like Amazon or IBM, or somebody who wants to put in a very large distribution center or even a manufacturing center. The problem is we're so far out here and we've been forgotten for so long. Broadband is an issue. So Pritt, one more time, go to the next slide. We're hitting broadband hard and heavy. What we are trying to do is we have partnered with Connected Nation, who is working with local EDCs and also the state broadband office. Now, this is where we do have some power, the county, because we can do these studies and include all of our cities in all of our rural areas and say, look, Forney may be taken care of 100% with high-speed internet, but you go 10 miles out of town and there's people that had to put their kids in cars, drive to the library in Kaufman County and sit in the back seat and do school during the pandemic. That's not acceptable to us. And with millions and billions of dollars about to come down to the states from the federal government to improve broadband, we have partnered with each other. Every city, every school district, every hospital, every special taxing entity, everybody is now on the same page. We come together regularly and we talk about, what do you need? What do you need? Because we're going to go before the state, not with just our hands open with where's our share, but we're going to say, here's the data that shows we've got to have our share. So I think the pandemic, whereas a lot of cities were separated from one another, a lot of communities were separated and people were separated from each other. I think Kaufman County embraced that and said, you know what, I'll put on a double mask, but we're going to have this meeting. And we did meet and we huddled together and we said, what can we do to prevent this from ever taking us down again? So step one was to look at the issues that we had, and broadband was number one. School buses, just as in many of your counties and cities, loaded their buses with Wi-Fi and drove out into the middle of nowhere and provided Wi-Fi to their school districts. We don't want them to have to do that. Now, when there's a lull in between crises, we want to get ready. And so I think having that communication that we have now, we have a transportation coalition, we have a communications coalition, we have a broadband coalition, and a lot of these groups are the same people, but we are all meeting regularly, talking about it. And just as Stacy talked about the opportunities out there, I think a lot of times Kaufman County would wait and wait for someone to tell them about those opportunities. We don't wait anymore. We go fishing. We go look for it. My background is in journalism, so I went fishing. I go looking for opportunities. Where's that story? Well, I'm not looking for that story anymore. I'm looking for that support. What are the opportunities out there for Kaufman County? I've mentioned earlier that counties don't have much power with development. So what we decided to do was talk to each of our big cities and tell them we are willing to work with you. If someone wants to come in and build a big development in the ETJ or right outside your city, and you're seeing the ramifications of it being so close but not in your power, let's partner. If they want a 50% discount on their property taxes for the next 10, 15 years from the county, then we're going to say, wait a minute, you're this close to this city. If you'll voluntarily annex into that city, and if you'll create a TERS, then we'll do that. So we did that with Terrell. We did that. We created 3 TERS districts. A developer came in, he wanted to put in 10,000 new homes with no parks, no infrastructure, nothing that would last past the time that all those homes are sold. And we said, hold on, wait a minute. If you do this, if you reduce that to 2,500 rooftops and you put in parks and you provide the streets and the sewer and all that, then we'll talk to you about it. And believe it or not, it worked. So as soon as that press release went out, I got calls from all the other cities saying, let's do that too. So where we don't have any power, or not the power that we need as the county, we are taking advantage of our partnerships with our cities and our school districts. Another thing we did with our local businesses was we got a lot of feedback from them after the pandemic. I know it's not completely over and we still get feedback, but there were things that we never ever thought about doing with our local businesses to help them. So, and our school districts. So again, the best thing that came out of it for us was the communication between everybody. We also, I told you we have 800 square miles. Well, if you have your sheriff's department in Kaufman, you are a good 30 minutes from Forney. And that's on a good day and not rush hour. So we didn't have the coverage of law enforcement in all areas of our county. So we were able to take some of our bond money, some of the pandemic money, and be creative enough about it to build a sheriff's substation on the southwest end of the county. So the school district, the Forney ISD, donated the land, which is right next to North Forney High School. They helped us with the creativeness of the sheriff's substation. We will be teaching high school classes in there on criminal justice. We will also do all of our training for that side of the county. It was an incredible partnership that would not have happened without the pandemic. So we can all, look at it and say, this really was horrible. It was just a horrible pandemic that we all just barely survived. Well, I think we all, and Marty is the most positive person in the world, and I think he'll agree with me, is you don't always look at what happened, you look at what can happen. So we got together and we've realized that we learned so many lessons with the pandemic that now I think we're a little bit prepared for the next one. And my stepmom, she's now retired from the CDC, but she was the director of marketing for 15 years. So I think she knows what she's talking about when she tells me, this is not the last one. It may not be exactly like COVID, but we will have other situations like this. It's inevitable. So the more we prepare now for then, the better. One more slide and then I'll be done. I also have 7 years. I'm a retiree from TxDOT. So I had 7 years with TxDOT.
Can't hear you, Donna.
So I think what we've been able to do is, can you hear me?
We can now. Keep going.
Can you hear me now? Am I back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you're back, Donna.
Okay.
Back.
I went out for a minute, didn't I?
You did.
Okay, so what we've been able to do is in our transportation coalition in the county is determine what we need, not, this year. That's already been planned. What's already approved by COG in the Regional Transportation Council is already done. It's already on the books. What we're doing now is, all right, let's build on that. Let's pretend, if you will, that we are 5 years out and we're about to suffer another pandemic. What are we going to have in place then? And how can we accomplish that now? So we have upped our efforts in communications with TxDOT, with COG, with our cities, with our neighboring counties, because this isn't, the roads don't stop at the county limit. We could talk all day about that, but I'm sure Megan knows that, Tarrant County is right in the midst of tremendous growth over there. So the county is really responsible for making sure everybody's talking and staying on the same page and can be ready for what comes next. So with that said, I'm gonna be quiet and let my colleagues in the cities talk. I do want y'all to know that don't be afraid to reach out to your county. I think a lot of times that communication, and I've worked for 5 different cities in the Metroplex, so I know how important the county is. And I also know that they're very underutilized. So reach out to them. They can help you, especially when you're doing development and being attractive to developers. So thank you very much. And I'll take your questions at the end.
Yes.
I believe. Okay.
Thanks, Donna. And I can't help but as we transition to our next speaker, you guys partnered, you came together, you talked, and you used tools that maybe everybody hadn't thought about. That was excellent. It occurred to me, can you imagine if we'd gone through the pandemic, by the way, without the EDD being in place and having done CEDS, 7 years ago? That could have, that's an interesting thought. Counties are tremendous. And I love what she said about the 30,000 foot level and the partnerships that you guys foster. Jeff Sanford, President and CEO of the Stephenville Economic Development Authority, is going to talk from the perspective of a city population of less than 50,000. Jeff, tell us what you got and what y'all been doing, please.
Thank you, Marty, and thanks to everybody that's on. I appreciate it, and thanks to Donna as well. And I also want to echo a welcome to Megan on the board. And I do have one quick comment that I thought that Ron Simmons, in that look that he had, looked a lot like Arnold Palmer there. It was a very cool look. So I wanted to say, love the golf. Anyway, wanted to visit with everybody. I've been tasked with something. I'm very humbled to be able to speak with you. I do have some history in a lot of different size cities. What's really cool about this one is being able to represent those that are under 50,000. And of course, like so many, when I came back to Stephenville, which is the cowboy capital of the world, you can see at least one hat in my screen here. And typically you'll see me with one on. Love the cowboy world. But we were kind of stuck in that world for a very long time and didn't have a lot of other things that we were diversifying into. And so in 2015, CETA, or the Stephenville Economic Development Authority, was created. And you'll see some graphs in a little bit that kind of illustrate what has happened since we've been created or since we've developed our organization. But again, thank you to everybody. When I was hired back over here, or hired to come here, like so many of you guys, we were supposed to be doing a lot of industry development, grow the industries, primary jobs, all those great things that economic developers do. And we were prepared to do that. And then the mayor came to us a number of years ago and said, you know what, I've got over $100 million worth of infrastructure needs that I have that I can't pay for. And we're either going to have to tax people, or we're going to have to figure out other ways to fund our city. And so, of course, that meant the easiest way is through ad valorem and sales tax efforts. And so we started focusing a little bit more on other programs outside of industry. Plus, our existing industry had enough jobs to fill at that time. That was, if you recall, not too many years ago, we were at 1 or 2% unemployment, which is full employment basically in our world. So we were looking for workforce pipelines in addition to some of these other things. So we kind of transitioned over to retail. We transitioned to hospitality, entertainment. Those were some big needs in our area. And what we found, of course, as COVID hit, that all of those things were the ones that were suffered so quickly at the hospitality and entertainment side anyway. So we decided to focus a little bit more. And Britt, if you'll go to the first or the next slide there, we just decided to focus internally and make sure that we didn't lose any businesses. We were hearing about businesses closing and people just not being able to do things. There was a lot of uncertainty during the COVID years or year. Like Donna mentioned, we did a very similar thing. We just, after about a month or two, realized that it was just not worth being mandated, except by law, of course. Outside of that, where we had the authority, we went and we petitioned the state, we petitioned counties and cities and everybody that would listen to allow us to remain open and put the choice back in the hands of the consumer. But in addition to that, there were a lot of questions related to PPE. There were and other types of things with supplies, supply chains, and so forth. We also know that there was a lot of some unknowns related to the CARES Act, to PPP, to EIDL, all of those things. So we put together a number of programs. We went out and we bought a bunch of sanitizer. We bought a bunch of masks. We bought everything that people wouldn't have. We realized when everybody said, oh, you got to give away money. You have money in the bank, just give it away, make grants, put them away, give them to people. And we talked to our businesses, which is the first line. And Donna mentioned that about communication. They didn't want the money. They wanted to know how to stay open. That's all they wanted. And so we went and bought gallons and gallons and gallons of sanitizer from, of all places, liquor distilleries that were creating that as a side business. And then we bought some masks and we distributed all those. We opened a vaccination clinic here in town, which served hundreds, if not thousands of people. But we went back and focused on staying open and trying to do the things that kept people open. So in addition to addressing those issues, we also, like Donna, we wanted that communication to be there. But really what I'm saying here is a communication of what those programs meant. Nobody at that time could read all of those CARES Act documents. Nobody knew what that meant. So we put experts in a room and we had seminars and we had other kinds of things and allowed people to come in and understand it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and be able to be there. The only place we did spend some money is on that third bullet point you see on the screen, on a marketing assistance program. Like many of you, we contract with a number of different marketing experts. At that time, we were with Buxton, and we talked them into giving us some licensing for some marketing resources for social media and for other places to help our businesses create unique marketing opportunities to draw people back into their place after that month or so that many of them were closed, whether they were bars or restaurants or other retail establishments. We thought that it would be very wise to say, let's help them with marketing and create a program. So we allowed every single business in town a free license, rather than paying any kind of money to the company or to us, to be able, and we gave them also some a line of credit, if you will, to be able to create some social media advertising. Many of them took advantage of that over the course of a few months as they were putting their programs back in place. Next slide. This is the most important thing that came out of it. Well, this is not, the next slide will be, but after this, when you see some of the people that were just, I mean, there's some of the sanitizers, some of the other things, just a collage of pictures from deliveries we made. It also got us inside many of our businesses and said, hey, we love you. Here's how we're going to help you. Because don't forget, many of us, what we do in the economic development world is we go out and find new business, which can tend to be competitors with our existing businesses. So this is a good move for us locally to expand our reach into our local community. So the next slide shows you that probably the best thing, not a single business in Stephenville, Texas closed during the year of the pandemic, not a single one. We had over 350, almost 400 businesses that participated in our programs during the course of 2020. And again, not a single business that participated closed down. And meanwhile, while we did have a little bit of dip in our sales tax receipts, we actually ended the year on a positive, and it was one of our better years. Not quite as good as 2019, the year prior, but it was just almost exactly the same as that year. But meanwhile, we had to continue doing what we were doing, and so we had this other, we continued to recruit, excuse me, and where we were doing hospitality and entertainment, we kind of shifted into some other things. And we closed on a power center. If you'll go to the next slide, Britt. We decided that we needed to change from, we wanted to preserve and respect and assist our local mom and pops, but like so many small towns, we didn't have a lot of national brands. We had a few stores I won't go into, or a few restaurants, a few retail establishments. But we decided not to just go after the brands themselves, but to go after developers that had those contacts with them. And so we had been developing tremendous relationships with developers from all over the nation, and actually closed during the year, November of 2020, on our first power center that had 12 national brands inside of it. And during the course of the building, after what they started in 2021, and by February of 2022, they opened. And now, or I guess 9 months later, all 12 of those had opened and had done some really tremendous things. In fact, I'll get to that in just a moment when I show that picture, but that kind of helped open people's eyes to a small town or secondary market, tertiary market as we are. People don't always look at these when you're a national developer or a national brand, rather. Oftentimes you go to the first markets or primary markets first, and then you might come and do a secondary concept that you have and put those in towns like ours. And we had to really prove why we were worthy of something bigger. And part of that has to do with our university. Not all small towns have a university. I know in Stacy's comments earlier, she mentioned about small towns and smaller universities. Ours is part of the A&M system, Tarleton State University. And it has also been seeing record recruitment because while one of the things that happened during the COVID years was they were very aggressive as well at encouraging students to come from all over the state. And actually, outside of A&M and UT, we do represent the most counties at Tarleton than any other school in the state of Texas. It's over 235 counties, over 230 counties are represented, and as well as many states and other places. These kids are coming into our community with mom and daddy's credit card. They're coming into our community with a lot of pent-up savings that mom and dad had because in their towns, they weren't spending their money. So we had the ability for a very big buyer's market here. Plus, they were used to these brands. If you follow them through cell phone coverage or through credit card coverage, as many of you do in your towns, you know that they you can track where people are spending their money. And of course, we did. We saw where our gaps were, where our leakage was, and our opportunities were. And so we decided with our developers to work with them on getting brands that could come in that would create new revenue into our area. And then also utilize, and this was mentioned earlier as well, the TERS effort. We had never had a TERS before about 3 years ago. And now we have one that's been expanded 4 times, and we have a second one. So essentially we have 6 or 7 TERS districts in Stephenville. which have helped create what I addressed at the very beginning, which was some infrastructure needs. We're paying right now for a complete rehaul of a $12 million north-south thoroughfare without having to tax our residents. And it's all come about because of just the one power center that I mentioned a little bit ago. But that wasn't the only thing we do. We just go ahead and show the next slide there. You can see what it looks like. These are some of the names, and many of you have them in your town, so nothing new, nothing. But many of these, we were the first market of our size to encourage these developments to come into our town. We have talked to executives at virtually every one of these, and so far I've received 6 different ones of the 12 that have said this was the greatest opening that they have had in their entire portfolio, was here in Stephenville. For some reason, our people spend a lot of money, which is nice, and that's good. We actually I was handed a deal, and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, but Stephenvillians actually spend per capita on retail twice the national average. So take that for what it is. I don't know what that means exactly and why, but I will say this, one of the contributing factors is in the last 3 years, our median income has gone up over 17%. In our trade area has gone up over 31% in 3 years as well. So we've had some success in drawing people into our area. And part of that is when people were going out of town at these same stores or stores like these, they were spending that money anyway. So we just were able to capture them and bring them into our community. Another project we have, which is not shown on the deal, is called The Stable. It is a restaurant row. One of the things we were lacking in is some restaurant type. Well, we had several wonderful restaurants here, but we wanted to expand that because that's another way that people spend a lot of money here in our community. And so we encouraged another, and utilized the TERS as well, to create The Stable. I don't have pictures in. We had a little technical difficulty this morning. And again, I apologize to everyone, and particularly Prit, but she was able to get these on there. Some really fantastic. We expanded a major boulevard in our community southward, and created 7 new parcels for our pads for restaurant sites. 3 of those have already been signed and are in. One is actually in, I should say. The other is about to start construction, and another one will start in probably by summer. So that's your 3rd one, and then we'll fill up the other ones by the end of the year. So a lot of excitement going on in Stephenville. Again, the Tarleton or the school has helped tremendously. Right now, they have about 11,000 students locally. Their goal as part of the A&M system is to become about 30,000 students here is their ultimate goal by 2030, which is pretty aggressive. We think even if they hit short of that and get 20,000, that's a big boom for us in terms of having some folks with money, expendable income ready to spend in our area. It has helped us, as many of you guys, as ICSC and other kinds of similar type recruitment efforts, you know that they're looking at markets. Many of them have changed because of COVID, have changed their concepts. They're not necessarily looking at big box stores. Maybe they're looking at small ones. Maybe they're doing drive-throughs where they weren't doing anything but standalone sit-down type restaurants. Maybe they're doing something else. And if they're not, it's certainly worth, I think, to ask them to do so and take a look at your market. But the biggest challenge is getting them into your town. You know, it's easy if they come into a major metroplex town, and we respect that. So we really have to work a little a little harder to get them to have boots on the ground in towns such as ours. But when you just Google Stephenville, you know, it doesn't come up with much. And so we have to get them boots on the ground and actually stand on one side of the road and just look at the incredible traffic. I think economic developers are the only ones that actually love traffic. I mean, love the cars that travel through here. We certainly do. And so we're able to bring those folks into our community, or when we are, we show them what is going on and the pure energy. The other thing that we've worked with in Tarleton State or at Tarleton State is to keep it from being a bedroom school. We don't want them to just pack up on Friday, come back on Monday. Right now, we're up to about 78% of them do stay year round. And that's been beneficial in trying to keep our population levels and our expenditures up here in our community. I did mention also that we tapped the brakes on industry. I'm getting ready to close here, but I did want to say that we've also been circling back to our industry partners, and we also have been doing some of the things that were mentioned in terms of expanding involuntary annexation, which has been a big boon as well, and have encouraged some big box stores, but also on our industry. We just completed a major for us expansion of an existing industry. Is a $50 million expansion, 300,000 square foot facility that they added on, and that was phase one. We had the state help us, thankfully, with a grant that helped to rebuild a road for their trucks and so forth. And now they're working on their second expansion in just a matter of 12 months. It'll be another $50 million expansion, and altogether it'll be another 75 jobs at this place. And again, all of the jobs we have required to be above our median income. So it's raising the wages and providing a little bit more expendable income in our area. The cool thing is, we used to talk about retail not having very good jobs, switching back over from industry back to retail. We used to say, well, that's not really good, high paying jobs, et cetera. But as many of you, if you've walked into many of these stores now, they're paying 12, 15, 16, 18, 20 bucks an hour in many of these stores. And it's really remarkable. While that doesn't get anybody rich, it's certainly a different story than when we were all kids and had that first college job or whatever in a restaurant or in a retail establishment. So been very, very lucky with that. Next slide. As I close here, I'd just like to say that, first of all, I respect and thank all of you guys for the work that you do in your communities. And I think that we can learn from each other. I've learned so much from each of you. One of the takeaways from us, I do believe that the TERS, finding other resources, has helped tremendously in handing things out, or excuse me, in addressing needs such as infrastructure and coming up with new monies in our community. Growing your trade area has helped tremendously. Those are the focuses, I don't know what the word is, but the different areas of focus that we've had. In the retail, again, that's going to hit a peak at some point, but I think adding the ad valorem and sales tax, these aren't just filling in empty spaces. We never had empty spaces. So these are all new builds. So we're getting new ad valorem, taking trailer parks or empty land and empty dirt and transferring that into new builds with new ad valorem and sales tax revenues to our community. I think those are all helping us to grow. The one thing I don't have on there, it looks like, is a graph. I thought I had it on this slide, and I apologize for not having it. What it did show, had it been on there, and I can certainly give it out there, is we have increased since our organization was created in 2015. Actually, end of 2015 into 2016, we have actually doubled the sales tax receipts in our town. And that alone has helped to pay for some of these infrastructure needs for our community. That doesn't even include the things that happen with residential growth, things that happen with ad valorem and so forth. That's sales tax alone. We have doubled our income on a yearly basis, actually even on a monthly basis, of course, for our community. So very exciting things happening in Stephenville. I know they are in your communities as well. And with that, obviously I'll answer any questions down the road here, but thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's turn to the category now for population of 50,000 to 199,999. In this case, Craig Hulse, the Economic Development Director from the city of North Richland Hills. Craig?
Thank you, Marty. Good morning, everyone. Good to see so many faces. I just have two slides, and this one, feel free to email me or ask to use on your own. But just looking back in a 1-year window, there were 40, at least in North Richland Hills within Tarrant County, there were 40 different federal, state, county orders declared that had some sort of impact upon the economic base of at least our community. And you can see here just some of the dates of key ones specific to occupancy load and access to the businesses, and broke it out between non-essential, food-based, and personal service. But the red percentages are when the occupancies went down, and the green is when they were able to go up. So you can see very quickly over a 12-month period, aside from COVID, aside from the disaster to people's health, whatnot, just from a business perspective, the number of communications that needed to take place to keep our economic base informed, both in a good manner and in a bad manner, where no, you aren't able to have people enter your business. In North Richland Hills, we have 1,200 brick and mortar businesses, and we believe approximately 300 more that are home-based or like within a salon, what have you. And so this just is a snapshot of what I call the yo-yo effect that took place over the course of between March 13, 2020 and March 12, 2021. This leads to the next slide, Prit, if you can advance. Really changes from pre-COVID that we've adopted going forward. And this was echoed previously. Expanded business communications. Never before had, I think, our function, our practice, economic development, and the practitioners that we are, have had to embrace communication to the levels that we did over that year. And one thing that we employed that was very useful that I would encourage you guys to consider is we have a thing called Everbridge. Many of you may have that in your respective areas, which is a notification system for, let's face it, outbound robocalling or outbound texting when there's a catalytic event going on or something to make our citizens aware of. The most common use is public safety when there's a weather event or a traffic event and what have you. But the technology exists for you if you have the contact information to notify your businesses of particular grant opportunity or fortunately, unfortunately, to reduce their occupancy load, what have you. We've also, in addition to meeting face-to-face, phone calls is employed email blasts. While, sometimes we all get those emails that are blasted to us, whatnot, the contact list that we have helped check the box that we are communicating both from multiple angles. We also, from a communication standpoint, broadened our scope of data that we collect from our businesses. We made sure we did have a business database that allowed us to know what the occupancy load was, what NAICS code they were affiliated with, what address they were in, that type of thing. But we broadened it during the pandemic to include who's the emergency contact person, what exactly is their hours of operation, do they do delivery or pickup, and then any other optional information that we could get to them very quickly. So we broadened our communication not only with tactics, but we broadened our information and knowledge about our businesses. Second is, as mentioned again, collaboration. I can't Marty mentioned a few minutes ago how ironic, thankful we were that Lucille formed and reached out to us to form the Economic Development District. But for that district being formed in the CEDS, none of us would have been able to be eligible for any of the assistance through the EDA that was made available through the CARES Act and the ARPA, what have you. And also industry associations. I think we all learned that very quickly. Zoom and Teams and the other things allowed us to stay in touch. And I think one benefit from the pandemic and going forward is I think we got to know each other a lot better. We got to, the Band-Aid was ripped off about calling one another and leaning on one another and networking. That includes us as economic development organizations, our real estate developer business communities, as well as the cross governmental channels such as the state level, the regional level, county level, even federal level with Stacy. I know she personally handheld me through some opportunities with the EDA. Third, and I think it depends upon what kind of level of density your community might be in, is shifts in land use, zoning, and development have occurred, and I think they will continue to shift. Where with e-commerce and with people forced to stay home, you had shifts in demand from showrooms to warehousing. I'm in Tarrant County. Warehousing is in high demand in Tarrant County, and I assume it's in high demand throughout the Metroplex. But the showroom demand is shrinking. You still need showrooms to buy stuff, but it's not as important as that warehousing element. if a business did not have a pickup to go, especially food related, pickup to go delivery option during the pandemic, chances are that they had to close down. And so how goods and services are provided have changed dramatically, especially when you review site plans of businesses and how, is there a to-go lane? Is there a pickup lane? And then finally, office and workspace needs. There are some industries, some folks that will work at home forever. Their industry has just changed. It's less expensive for that employer or that business to not have to pay rent on an office space and just rely upon those folks working from home. So the space needs have changed. But that relates to, how does that change to site-specific changes? Well, parking ratios. We have parking ratios in our ordinances here that are probably obsolete. We review them and we are very open to parking variances with some of our new projects, carve-outs within parking fields that now are no longer in use. And then you got the shrinking of retail commercial footprints. In Stephenville, the retail's blossoming and that's fantastic, but I would bet to venture that a lot of those end users, the traditional spaces that they may have occupied or built in the 2000s and even the 2010s are probably a bit smaller now because of the e-commerce element. And then finally, wow, additional exposure and importance. Man, we were rock stars during the pandemic. In a negative way, but we became very important. And I think, going forward, economic development through the pandemic provided a stark societal reminder on the importance of what it is, the practitioners, us, and just the tools that are available to us. And so really those are the four things that have changed in my role and within North Richland Hills.
Excellent, Craig. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about, let me take you through some of the things we've done in Grand Prairie real quickly, because I want to leave plenty of time for questions. Go ahead, Britt, in advance. There were some things I want to tell you about, some new initiatives that we've been trying to foster, specifically in the way of what we call enterprise development. Go ahead in advance. Ironically, it was in June of 2019, we had seen some retail development really take on along the President George Bush Turnpike area. I had been meeting with our chamber and we had some individuals raised a comment of, we really would like to be able to take advantage or be a part of this retail attraction and explosion that was taking place on 161. And so we had started talking with our chamber about focusing on franchising, or better, probably franchisees, trying to foster them, talk about what that's all about. And so we were starting to get ready to talk about that. And of course, that was frozen until everyone returned to normal operations. However, COVID-19 really only amplified that approach, that need to find new ways to foster what we call enterprise development. Go ahead and advance, Prit, if you would. And we brought on a staff member in the midst of, shortly after COVID, first phase, what I call COVID, the first full year, Kay Brown Patrick. And this is from what she's presented to our council, that we focused on moving from opportunity to funding to knowledge and support. That's all of what we're trying to provide more and more specifically to our citizens, as well as existing businesses or ones that are looking to grow. Go ahead and advance. This is a slide that a couple of you have seen, especially Dr. Martinez-Cosio. We spoke at UTA last year about this a little bit. We already have an extremely diverse community. And I love showing this meme, but this lets you know that how dramatic it is in Grand Prairie. 47% of our citizens are Hispanic, 22% Black, 69% of our community. We're a majority minority community. And so it was even more incumbent for us to think about, in the midst of all this, how we're going to move in services and add services that maybe we hadn't or should have been, but maybe needed to provide more so, even more because of COVID. Go ahead and advance, if you would, Prit. So in goals we had for this past year, a couple of them that we had identified as we brought on Kay a little over a year ago was to create initiatives to really support existing and aspiring small minority, and women-owned businesses to begin to try to really build on what we thought already we had, but make sure that we solidified this thought of entrepreneurs and creating micro enterprises and franchisees. And so that this was really, I think it really blossomed. We talked a lot about economic gardening as being a desire, but I think COVID only amped that up that much more, that we've got to spend some time focusing on it. So one of the things we did was to research and initiate a retail strip center storefront revitalization program. We hired an intern that was, I think he's still a student in the MPA program or in the planning program at the University of Texas at Arlington, College of Architecture, Planning and Public Affairs. He, this past summer, kind of drove the city and put that in place, and we're bringing it to council formally tomorrow night. We've been presenting to 2 different committees about it, and put in place a formalized structure for that. And then as well to recommend some other initiatives that we could implement that would foster redevelopment and renewal. Go ahead and advance if you would, please. So one of the new programs that we're putting out is Entrepreneur U, where we offer guidance to existing entrepreneurs, but as well and early stage startups, by providing some specialized training and workshops, promotion, counseling, networking. Go ahead and advance if you would, Prit. So we've got to bring in people. And one of the things we've all talked about is collaboration. There's folks who have experience doing this, some in other communities. I'll show you one that Craig's well aware of because he's worked with in North Richland Hills, but others that you may not have heard. Hush Blackwell, their Communities for Change. They're coming in with some of the legal portion. The North Texas Entrepreneur Education and Training Center is a partner with us now. And in addition to Tarrant County College, SBA, our independent school district, and Dallas College, to put together a program like this where we go out and try to provide some opportunities for people to catch new information they maybe hadn't seen before. Advance, if you would, please, Prit. So something that we're going to kick off here on the 18th, coming up here in just a few weeks, is Entrepreneur U, the business boot camp kickoff. It's where we'll start talking about, what is entrepreneurship? What are some of the systems and strategies and tools you need that could help your business really take off? What are the financial aspects? What do I need in the way of my legal structure and my setup for my business? And then as well, something that I've always I believe in and tried to remind people of, maybe to be a broken record for those of you that are old enough to know what a record is to talk about business planning and to try to funnel people to groups like SCORE, the SBA program, to get some help in putting that in place. So we're getting ready to have that over a couple of hours here later this month. Go ahead and advance, if you would, please, Prit. We've also got a new program that's kicking off called Ready, Set, Grow, where SBA and Hush Blackwell and Chase Bank are going to come in and help us really take these forward more in depth. And we're going to have some folks who are signing up to be a part of this first initial group, where they'll get specific pieces on each of those items, again, to be able to help them come away and be armed to make sure they're succeeding to the highest level. Go ahead and advance, if you would, please, Prit. A new thing we're putting out, and this is similar I've seen where I think Dallas has got a new franchise. The mayor has talked about it. A new franchise program. David Schlegg maybe can elaborate on this here in a minute, but we want to make sure that we diversify the franchise community in our city to grow the number of not only franchisees but franchisors. Some of our retailers and restaurants they maybe begin to grow and offer that as an opportunity if they want. Let's help them do that. To have this potential list of franchisees available for any interested franchises, and Jeff has talked quite a bit about ICSE and retail. I can remember a day when people made fun of and said, "Oh, retail is not economic development." I kept reminding them that's not true, and Jeff's done a good job of showing you how that's the case, that it's important. Well, many of the restaurants especially are telling us, if we're wanting them and our citizens have identified they want to see them be in Grand Prairie, that they're only placing franchise franchises in the community. Well, we want to be in a position to say, we've got somebody who's skilled, they've looked at their finances, they're in place, and here they are. We're bringing in some people that are already franchisees to talk to these individuals and provide some guidance, some mentorship on how they can launch their basically business as a franchisee. Go ahead and advance, if you would, please, Prit. There's a program I mentioned that's been in existence. Craig has had this in North Richland Hills, but the 1 Million Cups program, which involves, you see a couple of other people, both of our chambers, Dallas County, Grand Prairie, ISD, TCC, and Dallas College as well, where you can sit down and meet among one another and talk about how we can grow our businesses and share the good, the bad, and the ugly as a business owner, so that we've got the networking aspect that everyone's talked about and that Craig just talked about. My gosh, how much more we've got to not only know each other, but know others who can empower and direct people, because we're not going to have the answers, but I may not know, but I'll get you an answer. Well, that's what 1 Million Cups provides as well. Go ahead and advance, if you would, please, Brett. And so here's how it works. They have events either bi-weekly, weekly or monthly. It's really the organizer's choice. You'll bring presenters up. They're always free events, open to the public with free coffee. But presenting businesses must be less than 5 years old, and presenters must have a desire to learn. And each presentation lasts 6 minutes and is followed by a 20-minute Q&A. So it's a way to just get that information out on what I'm doing, not unlike what Jeff did today for us, what he's been doing in Stephenville. Get these young businesses to get out and share with one another and say, hey, I've been there and this is how I overcame a problem. Talk among one another, create that networking out on a greater level and help one another grow. Go ahead and advance, Britt, if you would. And then just so you see it in our goals for 2023, and y'all are getting a preview, these haven't even gone out yet, but two of the ones that we've got in addition to what we've shared is to take these new efforts we're pushing out, like Franchise U and Entrepreneur U, and to make sure we're using metrics and reporting on their success to cultivate that new generation of entrepreneurs and to partner with other groups and to possibly begin to co-host a youth entrepreneurship with key city partners. We want to put it down into our school districts and let them kind of take it and run. And then to explore the creation of a business incubator or accelerator program that's structured to help our startup businesses grow and succeed by providing free or low-cost workspace, mentorship, expertise, all those items that you see. And again, that plays into that same thing, to cultivate a generation of entrepreneurs, to have this robust pipeline of micro enterprises and franchisees, and to help just do that much more in the way we foster growth opportunities for established small businesses. And I think that's the last slide. If it's not, go ahead, Britt. Yeah, you may not have questions. Let's turn to that. Hopefully some of you have got some you lined up. Let's turn to the chat, and anybody that's got anything you want to ask us about what we threw out there. We've got a lot of data. Please feel free. At the end, I'll share with you just some things I tried to summarize that I heard from among all four.
Hey, Marty.
Please, Bruce.
I just have a question, actually a larger question for the group, and it has to do with the after effects of COVID, and I just want to test the waters here. So, it was economic disaster when COVID showed up, and everybody was wondering, what kind of damage was this thing going to do? Well, for Arlington, in this last fiscal year that just recently ended, we saw a huge spike in our sales tax revenues, and which was absolutely counter to any projections that our finance team was putting together or anything else. It just started going north, and so we had a couple theories about that. That okay, well, or is it just about because people tend to buy more stuff from home? Or stuff like that. Well, that's not by itself going to do it. But the other side of it that was most interesting, that we think probably had more to do with that, is the new rules from the comptroller's office about collecting sales tax from the buyer's place of residence, not the purchasing location. And I'm telling you, for us, we just saw an enormous spike that did not come down. And so I'm kind of curious if anybody out there, because to me, what that means is a larger city that's going to have, just more on the ground with more people living in it. If the cities are benefiting because of where those people live when they buy stuff online, that's going to be difficult for smaller communities, because a lot of times smaller communities have unique things that people want to go see and do. If they use their card or whatever to pay for it and then go back home, and if home is where the comptroller is saying that's where the sales tax should go, then that's a big deal. And so I'm kind of curious about it. I don't know that anybody has looked at it on this meeting thus far, but I would be interested to find out, if you do look at your sales tax stuff for the last fiscal year, did you see it go up? Did you see it go inexplicably down? And did you just attribute it to COVID if it went down? What was it? Because ours went completely opposite direction of what we forecasted it would do. And it does not seem to be slowed down. So I'm kind of curious, anybody out there have that observation or anything like that? Or is that something yet to be determined?
Bruce, not to oversimplify, but Arlington has done a good job with tourism and events, and I could see a stark difference because last year, business was usual for a lot of the sports teams and the adventure park and whatnot, and that just from looking outside in to your community, I know the tourism dollar probably came back.
Well, the thing about the sports teams is they've been doing what they've been doing for quite a while. So if they'd have had a bang up year, which they did not because of COVID, then that would have been one thing. But what they did is what they've been doing. So the revenue that comes in from them, really, if they were unaffected, shouldn't have changed much. So I don't know. In years prior to COVID, we had the ballparks and we had a lot of people come into games and we had the effect from that. So that didn't really change, other than number of games were reduced due to COVID and decimated the baseball season. But I'm just saying, we're not sure why our sales tax is going up, unless it's because we're a larger city, and Fort Worth would probably be able to speak to some of this too, is that we just had, there was a lot of choices within those boundaries of those municipalities that, kept the sales tax home. I don't know.
Bruce, this is Robert. Yeah, we had the same issue in Fort Worth. We, going into the pandemic, we thought our sales tax was just going to crater, and it ended up being about 16-20% higher.
That's exactly right.
It was, and yeah, I think some of that is could be contributed to especially during the pandemic. I mean, there was a big push to support your local shops that were open. So I think there are a lot of people that were making sure that they were spending money locally as opposed to taking it outside of the city. But yeah, we had the same issue, and it hasn't slowed down. I mean, it's just continued to increase. And so
so what's Fort Worth's population right now?
940.
940. We're at 400. And so if all those people are getting credited for their online sales by where they live, or even, online sales, then that is clearly a benefit to the larger cities. And it's a very big concern in my mind, for the smaller cities about, what is this? And I fear that this will go on potentially little noticed until all of a sudden it's very hard to dig out of it. And I don't have any answers. I'm just bringing up a point because it means something for economic development activities.
Yep. Right.
I can only speak on behalf of my own community, but ours, we have set sales tax records every single month since November of 2020. And we're a small town. I mean, we're 22,000. Trade area, as I said earlier, has gone up significantly, about 120,000, still significantly smaller than you guys out there. But the spending in our town has not stopped. Now, our focus has been a little different because, first of all, we're not reliant upon a metroplex type community. We're far enough away. We don't have an interstate. And while we were traveling there, bringing some of those new establishments into our community has certainly helped address that. Looking at what the leakage actually is, where are we spending our money? Is it on automobiles, on cosmetics, is it on whatever? And making sure we are focused on those and bringing those into our community, which takes time. But once we do, then that money that was being spent out is being spent locally. And then, of course, working to expand the trade area has expanded the pie, so to speak. So we're not just using the 22,000, we're using 120,000 to spend. So like I said, every single month since November of 2020 has been a record month for Stephenville. So at least so far, we haven't been impacted by that.
You know, this is Chris and Granbury. I might just add to what Stephenville's saying. We've had double-digit growth for the last 7.5 years every single month. And this month, our January's receipts for the first time were single-digit growth. I do account about 5% of our overall growth to the change in the comptroller's way of parsing out those funds. And I have compassion for Capel and probably some of the other large cities that have those distribution centers that have economic development agreements that have to be worked through for this change of policy. And Capel has been working on a project you might get with Mike Land, if any of y'all are interested, and see the study that he's done on the impacts of that comptroller's ruling. Also, there's legislation to codify that. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nika, you got your hand raised.
I do. I just wanted to listen to everybody. This is really interesting and fascinating, especially since I'm not in the thick of economic development anymore. I'm looking more on the small business owner side at this point. But really agreeing with Bruce and Chris both, because I don't know if you just guys recently, so we worked out this huge economic development agreement with Bed Bath & Beyond when I was in Louisville that was supposed to go on for 30 years as an e-commerce site. And they just announced they're actually closing that site completely. So I am assuming that, I mean, they were supposed to generate over $1 million in sales tax for the city. But now with the new legislation and just what's happening in the economics, which is my second point, I'd like to ask the group or talk about it a little. Yeah, I think it's a huge impact. And I do think that the bigger cities are going to be the beneficiaries of receiving this extra sales tax. But I also, you know, listening to the smaller cities, Kaufman and County, and then Stephenville, I mean, I think it's great that some benefits have come through, taking off from the, you know, from pandemic into, you know, really economic growth. And I think a lot of that had to do with, of course, what was available through the federal government, as well as the, you know, capital markets have been really, really strong. But now with the kind of interest rates raising, the little recession, some of the bigger companies laying off staff, what do you guys think? I mean, listening to Marty, I think, you know, again, we need to look at, you know, regrouping and how would these other changes impact? Now we're coming out of the pandemic into almost, I hope not, but a recession. I know the housing market, I work a lot with residential developers, and I feel like they're putting some of their projects on hold due to the, again, the high cost of interest rate and capital markets. Listening to Kaufman and thinking that, you know, I mean, they are looking at a lot of new housing. I'm not sure. Do you guys think it's going to be happening? I just want to hear your thoughts on what's happening right now today with the way the market is.
We can't build enough housing.
Really? Even now?
The darndest
even
thing
now
I've
with
ever
the
seen.
interest rates? That's interesting.
You just can't get it fast enough.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we have 16 different developments going on for residential right now, and that's from very
They're not
small
going.
developments all the way up to, you know, in our case, a big one would be 400, 500, 600, 700 homes at once. We don't have some of the thousands plus that many of our colleagues have, but we'll have a few thousand new homes in the next 3 years.
By the way, just so everybody knows, Britt and I have been having a discussion on chat. We both agree this is important. She's going to just forward you stuff rather than make a presentation at the end so we can keep talking. I do believe we're still going to have to be creative in finding financing for other uses. I have touched base with a couple of people in the last few weeks because I've got some projects that have said, we're going to wait to see if interest rates come down, and I'm trying to find them creative ways. I do believe we still have a lot that's been held on the sidelines. It's been like that for the last, 6 years, maybe. Some re-entered, some have held back. I think we're going to have to reach out and find more creative means and ways, but I think it's available. We're just going to have to continue to collaborate and communicate like we talked about earlier.
Hey, Marty, one of the things I was going to add is, you know, the inflation and interest rates have not hurt us nearly as bad as supply chain still, which you would think we would be over that. I guess COVID still travels through wood or windows. I'm not sure how that works, but that's what's slowing down and raising the prices of so many of our projects here, is they're getting out of budget a little bit. So we're trying to address that as well.
We're using very creative means. I don't know if you and I, if all of us, if I've shared with you what we've been using for years in terms of local sourcing for materials, for building materials, and we're offering that up for some of our projects just because grateful the state comptroller still provides for that, because that can provide us a way to provide a little bit of help for those who are dealing with labor and materials challenges. That's a great idea. We need to do that. If I could mention a couple of other things, Marty, real quick, and then I'll shut up. We got 4 minutes, by the way, so
I'll take 30 seconds. One, we have the one shift that we made is almost all of our incentives, if there are any at all, which we rarely give them, but if they are, they're only performance based. We don't do any grants or any free money or anything like that. And secondly, one of the things we did with our programs during COVID, and I think really rang true for a lot of people. If you recall, everything had an acronym. It was the CARES Act, it was EIDL, it was the PPP, you know, all these different things. So we decided to do the same thing, and we developed Restart, which was Restoring Stephenville, Assist, Relieve, and Transform, a very long, silly name. But everybody thought, oh, they must be really formal about this, and they kind of jumped under the bandwagon or under the umbrella of it, much like you have, Marty, with your boot camp, and you have the franchise you and the entrepreneur you and some of these other things. People get really excited about something that looks formal, and it sort of rang true for them. And I think they were willing to listen and jump in. They just needed leadership. And I think one of the things that all of us can do in our world is just provide that leadership in the lack of it. So there we go.
That's good, Jeff. We have a few more minutes. If anybody else has got a question, one thing I'd bring out, we've seen it shown during this video, we've lost both Jeff for a minute and Donna for a minute. The broadband issue we know is out there, not just for in the areas that are on the outskirts, but internally too. Have heard TERS mentioned several times. Is it not the tool, especially for non-EDC cities? It's a way to level the playing field, I've been saying for a long time.
Yeah.
We got a few minutes. Any other questions real quick or comments? One more we can handle.
Marty, I'll just say real quick, we do have
Please,
a page dedicated to broadband that I just put in the chat so that people can know what's available. And we're also going to put a link to our resource page, which includes TERS information.
That's good. Thank you, Britt. Yeah, and you know, Craig's shared with everybody about the whole sales tax. Sales tax is going to continue to be an interesting issue. I don't think the changes are over yet, unfortunately. I wish it was, but this whole idea of networking, knowing one another, unique marketing, as we heard shared, it all comes down to communication. It's the darndest thing. David, last word.
Marty, you brought up our franchise program, and it's very much a volunteer program. It's similar to sort of a small business, help people out. The person that's participating on behalf of the mayor is a volunteer, and haven't really heard anything how that's been going on since September, since the launch. We have our own small business group. We've also changed our public-private policy program just passed last month. So, and it's going to focus more on small business. City of Dallas is pretty much built out at this point. So the challenge for us is working with the existing businesses as well as growing south of the Trinity River, taking opportunities of the new entrepreneurs that are coming out of the woodwork all the time. As we go through a recession, we all know that entrepreneurship actually blooms during that time. So we're trying to get ready for that and figure out what resources are available. In regards to the sales tax, I have a personal fight where I'm not a big fan of doing 380 sales tax agreements. We've seen a few of those requests and we look at them at a very close case-by-case basis. But one that we do have is with Ulta Beauty, where they have a distribution center where part of the facility in Dallas is for their retail component and part is for their e-commerce. We did a sales tax agreement for their e-commerce and I monitor their monthly sales tax. I was very surprised that they had a blowout December this year from a sales tax standpoint. I was quite amazed compared especially to the previous year where really COVID was really starting to smack things around.
Thank you,
But
David.
sales taxes is an essential retail for all communities. And if you can get an e-com, that is the future. Is my thought.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that as another subject. Maybe Prit is bringing up, econ. David, that's excellent. It's something we believe in Grand Prairie, and would love. I think it makes sense for us all to drill down a little further on that subject. We have gone a minute longer. I apologize. We try to stay on track, but I think this has been very helpful. I hope for those of you that weren't part of the panel that you got some stuff you can chew on. Let's keep talking. You've got emails. This isn't limited to this discussion. We do have a meeting coming up on Monday, May the 1st at 10. Prit's going to email us updates. We shortened that because she said, hey, let's keep talking. So you guys have a great week and give thanks that the ice is gone.
Thank you all so much. This was amazing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.